Good afternoon, Shebnem. My name is Shanny. Welcome to our Choreo book club. We're so happy to have you with us today to talk about your latest article. So I'm just going to introduce you to our audience. Şebnem Sözer, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She's a faculty member of the Department of Performing Arts at Düzce University in Turkey. She earned her PhD in theater theories, criticism, and dramaturgy from Ankara University, Turkey in 2016. And she's trained in No and Nihonbuyo in Kyoto, Japan. So today we'll be discussing her latest article, Ain and the Actor, which is published in the prestigious The Drama Review. So welcome again, Şebnem. We'll start out maybe with you talking a little bit about yourself and perhaps your research.
Thank you. This article is related with my PhD work, actually PhD research, and it is given to not a dance department, but a theater department, but I think that it is related with dance also, because this theater group that I was working with was very much interested in Turkish dance, including the semâ ceremony, which is a Sufi ritual, very old Sufi ritual. And I started my PhD in 2010. And then after 2 years, I had a break to do my Choreo studies for 2 years. Then I came back and started writing my PhD dissertation. I wanted to, usually in theater departments, it's always theoretical work. There are not too many fieldworks in Turkey. People are not doing fieldworks a lot. In recent 3 years, they started doing fieldworks. So after Choreo, I couldn't think of a dissertation without a fieldwork. So I decided to do the fieldwork with this theater called Ideogram Théâtre. They are Paris-based, but founded by a Turkish theater artist 20 years ago, who migrated in some way to Paris from Turkey. It was a time, the man is called Ali İhsan Kaleci, and it was a politically not very good time in Turkey when he graduated from theater department. So he went to Paris, and then he worked here and there, and then he founded a theater group. So, but he has never lost contact with the Turkish culture, and especially tasavvuf, which is the Mevlevi Sufism in Turkey. Maybe it's not very known as, this name is not very well known, tasavvuf. I can say Anatolian Sufism also. It's Anatolian Sufism. And it is very well known. There is a ceremony called semâ, Mevlevi ceremony. It is also known in the world as whirling dervishes, which I don't like to call it. So in my, in my article, I refrained from calling it whirling dervishes or whirling dervish dance or dervish dance, but use the original word, which means a lot, because it means hearing and listening, and this is very much related with Sufist way of thinking. So this theater group, the leader of the theater group, thinks that he wants to do a theater today, which is like semâ. So I was very much interested with this idea and trying to understand this, because when we talk about a ritual or a dance or a ceremony like semâ, we are looking at the outside movements, the physical movements usually. There are other artists also who is interested in this ritual, but they are taking elements which are physically represented, like movements are. This whirling movement is very, very, very popular. But when we look at theater, ideogram theater, they are more interested in the underlying philosophy. In my article, it says that semâ with movement, there are two kinds of semâ. Semâ with movement, semâ without movement. And they say that semâ with movement is for the novices of Sufism, which prepare them to a different level, a higher level. But semâ without movement is for the more mature Sufi dervishes. Because they don't need anything which is appealing anymore. Movements, sound, and music, they don't need anything anymore. So it is interesting because I'm talking about the movement practice, but I am not talking about the movement practice, but what is behind it in my article. So I wrote this, my PhD dissertation, and it was in Turkish in my original language, my native language. Then I wanted this to write in English. So for ICTM 2018 Ethnochoreologic Symposium, I decided to write something about it. And I had a presentation in Szeged, Hungary, on my PhD fieldwork. When I wanted to write something, I wanted to illustrate what I have been experiencing during my dissertation, during my fieldwork. So when you look at the article, it starts with the title, "The Discovery in the Cave." So it starts with the kind of memory telling, how can I say? Telling about my memories. From my own point of view, what I saw, what I did, what I understand, what I didn't understand. I am just trying to make a picture of what was going on in my dissertation. And it is related with my topic also, Ein, because it is the time that I discovered this is related with the concept of Ein. And I wrote on my notebook, Ein, Ein, Ein, repeatedly. So this is something that I owe to Choreo Mundus, because I learned to tell about my original experiences of the fieldwork in Choreo Mundus. Usually we use an objective language, you know, but they encouraged us to use a subjective language, because it is important that this is us who is doing this fieldwork. This is me who is doing this fieldwork. So what I see and what I experience is very important. And also, just before this conference, our friend Jana El Awaidin from Beirut had a magazine called A Dance Mag, and he wanted us to write something about our dissertation in Choreo Mundus. And she wanted us to write very subjectively, very personally, what we experienced. She didn't expect very academic papers, but we already wrote it because we already wrote our dissertation. But she wanted us, to write our experience. So I wrote about my dissertation, Choreo's dissertation, to A Dance Mag, the first issue, and it was a good experience for me because I was very much I was always using this objective language. So it was nice for me and liberating for me to use this subjective language to talk about my experience in the fieldwork. So I decided to start my conference presentation with something like that in ICTM. So I started like that. And when it is presented, but not read, when people hear about it, it is more like a subjective retelling of a story. So it was meaningful for the audience, I guess, because the audience said that it was good, that we understood everything, that you drove us a picture of your dissertation at the beginning. It was exciting for us, they told me. So I decided to put this at the beginning of my article, this part. And this is the part that almost never changed till the beginning of my first draft of the article, till the publication, because TDR also encouraged me for using this kind of a drawing of a picture of my fieldwork. Subjective language was not a problem. And Richard Schechner also told me that it is a good part to start like this. So it was important for me. So after my presentation, I worked a lot on my article, of course, because it was shorter, and now it is three times longer because I need to talk about more stuff. So I wrote my paper and sent to TDR. They say in 3 or 4 months, we will be back to you. So after 4 months, I had an email from Richard Schechner. He was the editor, and he's very much interested in Mevlevi semâ ceremony. This is one of his interests. I knew it before. So it was in his hands, because not another editor, but in his hands. And there was a report with 5 points. And he said that the article has good ideas, very good ideas, but it is not ready for publication in TDR yet. So, and because there were some structural problems, and it was my illustration of my fieldwork was not enough. He wanted to hear more about what was going on stage, more illustration, more telling, and more describing the fieldwork and everything. And more information about the Mevlevis, something like that. He wanted things like that. And he wanted me to reconsider my, I had a sentence like that in my first draft. Semâ is not a dance. Semâ is not a dance, I was saying. This is, I told also in ICTF, because it is something else. It is a ritual, I was telling. But Schechner told me that it is a dance. I can call it a dance because it is a movement practice, which is under the umbrella of how we define dance. So I have to erase all this stuff, because and I understood that it is not needed at all. This kind of speculative, how can I say, this discussion is not needed in my article actually. What was needed was more focusing on the concept of Ein. So I changed my focus. I didn't, you read it already, so I'm not talking about whether it is a dance or not, but what is specific to semâ and what we can learn it for theater. I am always discussing this. So, and I said, I worked on it for a few months and sent again, and waited 3 or 4 months again, of course, because there is a large queue, I think, waiting to be considered for being published. And Richard Schechner again wrote something to me, again some points, and I think it was very encouraging, but it was a second rejection. I thought like that. But anyway, I continued, and in third time, I sent it third time, and this time, again in Richard Schechner's hands, always like that. And he asked for some revisions, many notes besides. He asked revisions, and I worked on it. And he asked revisions, and I worked on it. He sent it to another editor. That editor had some notes, and I worked on it. And he sent the article to a Turkish scholar, which is interested in this kind of stuff that he knows and he trusts. And the Turkish scholar had some notes. and he sent it to someone else related with Sufism, I guess. So it went to 3-4 people. And I always worked on these notes, and it got major and major and major and major in every time. So, and 1 year ago, it was expected. So I had to wait 1 year to get published because there is a long queue again. So it is important to say that the drama review is working really hard on papers. Şehnar even told me that I am making you work hard because I want your article to be published. Always he said like that. And I really worked hard. It took me a lot of time actually and energy and years. And but at the end it was accepted. And the thing is, the drama review is not peer reviewed. It is interesting, but this is true. Because Şehnar doesn't believe in peer review. Because in peer review, you send to 2 people, the article to 2 people, and it comes back and you work on it. But in this way, he was able to follow all these stages with me. And in some way, 3 or 4 people already read my article. So it was 4 reviewed. 4 people reviewed my article in some way. So he doesn't believe in peer review because it's like, but it was nice experience for me not being peer reviewed because as Şehnar already knew what was going on before, he always pointed out what is needed here, what is needed there, and so on. So I was peaceful on working on it, not with no time restraint at all. I have my time and worked on it for months. I did other stuff. I did my personal stuff. And when it is ready, I was able to send it. So there was no time restraint. It was also relaxing for me because I wanted also to be perfect. So the story was something like that.
Yeah. Perfect. I can say definitely from the perspective of a reader.
And one more point is I'm not a native speaker. Şehnar advised me to work with a copy editor, which is native or near native in the first rejection. So after I finished my studies, I sent it to a copy editor. He worked on it and sent back to me so that the English was more understandable. I think this is important. This is advisable that if you are not a native speaker or you are in Canada and using it every day, but I'm in Turkey, I'm not using the English every day. So if you are in a different country, non-English speaking country, I advise that it is good to work with a copy editor that you trust. You have to spend some money, of course, for this. Yeah. But in Turkey, it's not very, very high price. And I didn't pay anything to the drama review. So it was okay. Nothing is paid for being published. So that is the last point.
No, but, having experience going through all those reviewing process with Şehnar and really working on it, even from the other reviewers, I'm sure you got way much more than, the monetary value. It's just beyond what you've learned, right? This whole process of getting your article published. And Şebnem, you really I have all these questions and you really just answered all of them without me asking, because I was going to ask about your fieldwork and then about the process of, getting published in drama review. But I'm just going to go through my notes right now. Definitely you talk about, I really enjoyed being able to use the subjective experience in the fieldwork, but maybe just to trace your steps back a little bit. What got you first started in this project? Because I think in the article you also mentioned you were joining Ideogram Theatre, you took a workshop as an actor or an observer. So if you can talk a little bit about how you got started with them.
2011, I think 4 years ago, 4 years before my fieldwork, I had an ad in Ankara University that I was doing PhD, that there will be a workshop on traditional arts. This is a workshop on traditional arts of Turkey, and it is given by a theater person. So I went to this workshop and I met with this Ideogram Group Theater, which came from Paris to Cappadocia for 1 month. There were French participants and also Turkish participants. So it was an international group of people. So it was interesting for me to meet with them because, okay, they think that, okay, this is interesting for me. In Turkey, when you talk about traditional theater, it is something of the past because Turkey is a country that looks forward to Western theater. In Turkey, it is usually thought that Western theater is the more prior, the how you say that, better one.
Yeah.
So traditional arts are backwards somehow. Theater people usually think like that. Within the dance groups, you can also see there is the traditional dance groups and these contemporary dance groups, and they don't really connect with each other. The contemporary dance groups are always they are like a copy of European dance, kind of. They go to Europe, always Paris, London, Germany, and come back to do something in Turkey. Europe is this, not America a lot or Canada, but Europe, especially Germany, France, and England. So there is this gap between traditional arts and contemporary theater and dance. So it was interesting for me that they were very much interested in traditional dance and arts. There are many traditional dances in Turkey, but they are alive. They are practiced in the villages. They are practiced in the urban area by common people, like in Hungary, you can say. But theater people are not very much interested with this, or they are not very much interested with rituals like semâ. This is something that has to be kept as an archive, and okay, they are good, but it's like an archive. But Ideogram Theater made me understand that there is something that I can learn from these traditional arts when I had this workshop. Because, for example, we rehearsed, there were some rehearsals. They didn't want it to be like the mainstream theater, but something like maybe ancient Greek theater we can imagine, with singing, with grand gestures, with dancing, and not something psychological, but like in the dance. Maybe you can think about Japanese traditional theater. It is very much stylized. So they wanted something more stylized like traditional arts. And also they were very much interested with the philosophy behind. The Sufism. And the key point is Ayn. In order to do theater, we need people. If there is no people, there is no theater, they believe like. And people has to be face to face, look into each other's eyes and learn what is being human from each other. Like in Sufism, in every practice of Sufism, and also semâ. So we have to be very respectful to each other during the workshop, and we learned from each other. When you learn a dance from someone else, you also learn something behind it, some kind of philosophy, Sufi philosophy. behind it. I am writing it, it's written on my article also. So if you don't have this spiritual quality, they think that it is not theater anymore. So it is all this stuff, everything, the movement, the songs, and dance is for trying to catch the spiritual quality, which is also something collective. So I was surprised to see that they were very much and deeply interested in the traditional arts, not just the movements or just the image or something like that, but behind the philosophy. So when I came back, then after that, I started Choreo Mundus. And then when I came back, I thought to myself, there is something to learn from traditional dance and theater in Turkey. So this group is interested with it. So I have to do some fieldwork with them.
Yeah, you did mention about cultural tourism too in your article. And
oh, a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what really captivated me, because like you mentioned, like semâ has two parts, the one with movement and without movement. And but this immanent quality that you were describing throughout this article, the spirituality of it, perhaps, you know, because my previous research was also on a religious ritual, and now I'm doing it on Tai Chi. So I feel like I'm definitely going to quote you, because it's hard to describe this thing, that this spirit that is moving the performance, the essence of it that moves people, because first of all, it's not visible, like you cannot see it, not to say it's not tangible, you definitely cannot touch it. And then to be able to write about it, perhaps then you go into the philosophical side of it, right? So maybe this leads me to my next question about, like, did you feel when you had to embody, or when you were in the workshop, when you embody the movement, were you also trying to embody the philosophy behind it? Did you manage to experience, the Ein that you talked about during those workshops or during your field work?
I will say yes. Not always, of course, because you are trying to do something. When I went to workshop, the theater group knew that I had some experience in Japan. And they think that in the Asian countries, Asian traditions of dance and theater, there is something common, which is this, which is different from Western theater, which was some, kind of spiritual quality. So they wanted me in the Cappadocia, in this, on the dust and open air, they wanted me to dance Nihonmyo, or no, Japanese dance. But the music is not Japanese dance. It is some other Turkish music or something else, but it is Japanese dance. They wanted me to do that. And they want me to teach it to other people at the moment. So I started to dancing, improvising in some way, and the people just follow me, like in the traditional arts. So it was weird for me in the first side, at the first moment, I mean. Then I started improvising, and within these movements and listening to this music, I started to see this atmosphere of Cappadocia, the rocks and the air and this silence, also music and silence, and people around me. And my look began to change. I was not just moving, but I was living here. How can I say? I was throwing some energy and bringing it back, throwing in some energy and bringing back. If I was alone dancing, maybe this wouldn't happen. As 6 people were around me, they were traditional Turkish dancers. They were from Turkish dance department, traditional Turkish dance department students. And they are trying to catch my movements and so on. I was leading them, and then I experienced something like that. it might seem like this kind of, how can you say? It is not a mixture of dances, but kind of, they are trying to find something common within all these traditions. So I didn't feel like it is like a, how you say, salad of cultures, but always trying to find something and connect with people. So I think that I can say yes, I had this quality. I experienced this quality for a while. And there were other people, their faces were also changing after a while, I think. Because it starts and it goes on for hours. It starts, you begin to improvise, then you go out and you go in sometimes, go out, go in, but it never stops for 1 hour, 2 hours, it goes on. So you are experiencing like something like a festival kind of, how can I say?
Wow.
It is not just a show, but you are experiencing how to do this. Because semâ is also very, very long, in fact.
Right.
It takes the whole day with preparations and everything. So, and we also have to be very respectful to each other, don't speak, and attentive, and so on. I hope I could answer your question.
Oh yeah, definitely, Shanna. You know, because I was also thinking about the Tibetan ritual dance that I was writing for my Choreo Mundus thesis, and it involves a lot of turning as well, and a lot of the points that you mentioned, like the state of mind that the dancers have to be in order to perform it together as a group. For the monk dancers, the Tibetan monk dancers, they also meditate like the days before the performance to put themselves in that right, you know, that right vessel, that right state of mind in order to perform the dance. And also one of the things you mentioned was also the direction of it. Like, I don't know, you can correct me if I remember wrongly. It's like they turn counterclockwise. Is that correct? Yeah. So in the Tibetan dance, they say they also do they actually do both ways to mirror the planets, the movement of the planets. So maybe I didn't read it in the article, but you can talk a little bit about it. It's the movement, the directions of the movement. If you can, explain a little bit more why counterclockwise, for example.
They say that clockwise is the way of the devil. They say in Islam. Counterclockwise is the way of the God.
Okay.
There are some explanations about it, but there are also confusing explanations about it. So it has to be counterclockwise. I think it is also related with our human body.
Okay.
But our heart is in the left-hand side. I think there is something physical behind. Now, medically, it can be explained, I guess. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because like in the Tibetan Buddhism, the counterclockwise is the cult, like because there are few branches also. So one of the cult is the Bon religion, is the original like shamanism. They do it counterclockwise. But then the Tibetan Buddhism, which came from India, they do it clockwise. So like you said, like one is the direction of the devil and one is the direction of the God.
Like that.
So
in chain dances in Turkey, they also do counterclockwise. They're always doing counterclockwise. I don't know why.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And also at one point in your article, you mentioned you took notes but refrained from taking photos and videos. Was it a rule that you were not allowed to take photos, or was it coming from yourself?
Both, actually. The director was very sensitive. So I was not using photo camera, I was not using my camera, but someone else was using. He was very irritated from it. So I didn't really wanted to do that. And when the director was not there in the cave, it was 6 a.m. and they were in a state of mind, and I was already as something else for them. So with the camera, it might change everything, I thought. So I had my camera with me. And I said to myself, I cannot do it now, maybe later. But then later I also couldn't do that. So it is very unfortunate that I don't have this material. So what I have is my memories and my notes, field notes. Field notes, even sometimes the field notes were too much for the director. He said to me, okay, you are making the actor nervous. Don't write too much. Don't write everything. And I put my notebook away. Yeah. He said to me, just watch and try to remember, because this is how traditional arts are learned also. You don't have notations or anything. You don't have notations. For music also, you don't have notations. You have to trust your memory. So it is in the tradition itself also. Yeah, kind of. So it is unfortunate I don't have anything.
No, it's so funny, Shebnem, because like, I find, I just reading through, like I was telling you the article, I just see so many parallels because, I did the field work in India, just watch the Tibetan dance, but I brought my camera like from NTNU all the way, but I didn't film anything because first it was the rule. They didn't allow me to even bring the camera inside, the hall because it's so sacred. But second, like you said, I feel like it's almost intrusive, the object, the camera, as almost like prying into some private space, So it's fascinating because now with the pandemic, I feel like dance is taking on another dimension with all the dance films that are being created on screen because live performances have been, halted for the 2 years, right? So that's why maybe now with the mobile, with the smartphone, it's not as intrusive as the, the traditional big cameras anymore, but I feel like it also changes the methodologies that we'll be using in the field, with the smartphone and everything. But like you said, I think, just silent observation is part of the tradition, and perhaps also like a respect to that spiritual and to that essence that we're trying to tap into. And when we use a foreign object, and then it takes us out of the moment, maybe.
And the state of mind of the researcher has to be parallel with the state of mind of the performers also, I guess. When you have the camera, you have a different state of mind, even with notes. You cannot help it in some way.
That's such a great point. Yeah, I don't have any more questions for you, actually. Like, I hope I didn't overwhelm you with too many questions.
No, thank you.
But like some of the terms that you use, for example, like artistic kinship, I was writing down, you were mentioning this artistic kinship. I haven't learned about it before, so I was a bit curious about that too.
How can I say? Okay, these are different arts. Like one is called Turkish classical music, one is called Turkish folk music. There is the semâ ceremony. But in some way, they share a common, an unseen and common base. There is a base behind, cultural base, which comes from centuries. It is there for centuries. And at some points, some arts emerge from it. I see it like that. This is what I mean kinship. Like there is this base for the music and also for the dance, but they take different kind of forms. The philosophy behind the way how people look to the world is common. Now, for example, there is this pop music, of course, in everywhere. But in some examples of pop music, you can even see this common base. There is new material, but there is something culturally related with Turkish culture. That is what I mean by kinship. The way you look to the world. How can I say? For example, the life is temporary. This is a very, very common thing for Turkish looking at the world. So the material world is not very much important then. If the world is temporary, you cannot bring anything to the grave. So this, and another common point is this world is like an illusion. So it is just images in front of your eyes. So what is there? What is important in the life you have to discover? There is this kind of base and cultural background. That's what I mean by artistic kinship. And the project Ideogram Théâtre, the director of Ideogram Théâtre, thinks that all Asian arts has kind of a kinship, like Tai Chi. He will be very much interested in Tai Chi, I think. And also Japanese dance, he was interested because they have something that today's Western theater doesn't have. He thinks that.
I definitely agree. And I think that's why, the term artistic kinship really stands out for me, because even talking to you, I'm able to draw so many parallels, within different Asian traditions, even in Buddhism, like what you just talked about, like how life is impermanent and it's an illusion. And also you mentioned unconditional love towards all. It's also one of the tenets of Buddhism. So when I was seeing, reading it, it was just like you said, the kinship really extends on so many different levels that I can relate to in different Asian tradition. And perhaps like you will be finding or discovering more kinship or relations, when you spend time in Japan. And
yes, I am also attracted to Japanese Buddhism very much. And I see that in Nihonbyo, there is something also in Nihonbyo which is related with Japanese Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. They are discussing it. I will be very much happy to meet with your colleague, Colin, to talk about this. But there is this danger. There is always this danger of Orientalism.
Oh my God, of course.
And self-Orientalism, because Orientalism sees all Asia the same, all Africa the same, know.
Yeah.
So it is very tricky when you talk about this stuff. Yeah. So we have to be careful. And I also forgot to tell about it. The Whirling Dervishes is a very Orientalist image, very much Orientalist image. And Turkish culture is also like that. When writing my article, I was always very, very, very careful for not falling into the traps of Orientalism. I tried hard. How can I say, I didn't want things to look exotic.
Yep.
Or not known, exotic, and there is some secret behind. I didn't want it like that. So I hope that it is successful enough to be not Orientalist. This is very important because when you say Tai Chi also, I guess, people has an image.
Yes.
They don't know what is behind, or there are others. There are different Tai Chis and there are different Sufisms today, and it lives in different ways of life.
Because all Asian, because it's funny because I'm now writing my exam, on methodology for my PhD, and I'm having trouble writing about Tai Chi in the Western academia because, like you said, like right away it falls into the other category. It falls into world movement. I mean, exactly, I have the same trouble about calling it dance too, Tai Chi. But the very moment we try to fit it into this, criteria of Western academic scholarship, then there is some kind of tension there, and like you said, like we have to be very, very careful. But I wonder if, you know, we have to be careful because of our identities too, because maybe it's easier for Western scholars to write about Asian traditions. I don't know, there's a lot of politics behind it too. And now with the decolonizing movement in West, you know, in academic scholarship, we talk about decolonizing methodologies. So I feel this is one of the things how we can, as you know, Asian scholars, to write about our own or another tradition. How can we write that in a you know, like you said, and you have demonstrated it very beautifully through your article in a very professional and scholastic way. So I have a model to look up to.
Okay. One strategy was using the emic words, emic concepts, as you can see. This is something I learned from Choreo Mundus.
Yeah, that's right. That's why you work with a lot of translation too, using.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, that's true. I think Agil really drill us on using the indigenous emic concepts of the dance, how the natives call them. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, Sebnem.
Thank you.